Hey guys, welcome to the Liberal Hive Mind, a channel solely focused on exposing the abundant hypocrisy of the left. You know, it's funny because Democrats are always going on and on about the voiceless and the powerless people, right? But in reality, I mean, we've analyzed their track record for years. They act as if they care about the powerless, but they seem to always be doing the bidding of the globalist elites and the big corporations. Look no further than the 2020 era, let's call it, where they pretended that they were just trying to protect the most vulnerable people, but really, their policies seemed to serve the biggest corporations and created the biggest wealth divide, I'd argue, in world history. And of course, as they run this scam, they're always pointing the finger at the other side, specifically Donald Trump, and claiming Donald Trump only cares about the billionaires, right? Bernie Sanders, the billionaire class. Donald Trump and his billionaire buddies. He supposedly only cares about the rich. But of course, as we've covered and as we've pointed out, and I believe we've proven over the years, Donald Trump, in my view, or at least in my lifetime, seems to be the only politician who actually speaks for the powerless and the voiceless. He's the one billionaire who seems to put the American working class at the forefront of his political thought and action. He's the one who speaks for the persecuted, who speaks for the people that are getting the short end of the stick of the system. And now, I guess, building on that point, Donald Trump does it again. There's been a lot of reports over the last 6-7 years, issues of racial persecution happening in the nation of South Africa. It's been quite the controversial issue that seemingly nobody wants to talk about. And when I say nobody, I mean our politicians and the mainstream media. Of course, it fits right in with what I was talking about, the selective outrage that we see from the left when it comes to human rights violations and other forms of discrimination. For some reason, the left seems to think that they have the authority to pick and choose who deserves sympathy and who doesn't. When their preferred political groups cry out for justice, they demand intervention. The Karens flood in the streets and screech with emotional pleas for action. But when the victims don't fit the preferred racial narrative, of course it's silence, or worse, justification. And nowhere is this clearer than the response that we've seen from the left of what's going on in South Africa, where reportedly white South African farmers are being systematically targeted, brutalized, and murdered. For years, the mainstream media and the left has ignored this issue because, at least from what I can gather, it seems as though it contradicts their simplistic, radicalized racial view of the world and history. They've built an entire worldview around colonial guilt and historical oppression, and in their minds, some groups of people are simply not allowed to be the victims. In other words, we might have a group of people that are being systematically targeted, but nobody's listening. I'd say that fits the definition for voiceless, but I guess no longer is that the case because Donald Trump just decided to give them a voice, to finally shine a light on the issue or at least start investigating it in good faith. In other words, Trump strikes again, absolutely doing the right thing here. Excuse the long-winded intro, but you know, there's a lot of context here. Let me show you guys exactly what's going on. We got some stuff to get into, so let's roll the tape. All right, folks, so once again, Donald Trump identifies the issue, and he's doing something about it. Take a look at this.
Why South Africa?
It's only South Africa. Terrible things are happening in South Africa. The leadership is doing some terrible things. It's horrible things. So that's under investigation right now. We'll make a determination. And until such time as we find out what South Africa is doing, they're taking away land, they're confiscating land, and actually they're doing things that are perhaps far worse than that.
He also released this statement on Truth Social. South Africa is confiscating land and treating certain classes of people very badly. It is a bad situation that the radical left media does not want to so much as mention. A massive human rights violation, at a minimum, is happening for all to see. The United States will not stand for it. We will act. Also, I will be cutting off all future funding to South Africa until a full investigation of the situation is completed. And of course, just so we're clear, he's talking about white South African farmers. These are European descendant white farmers whose land is being seized by the South African government. And now Trump is promising that he's going to cut funding to South Africa while this investigation is happening. This is an issue of possible human rights violations that the left is simply swept under the rug as if it's not happening. Under the Joe Biden administration, they basically buried the story, ignored the ongoing killings, and now Donald Trump's coming in and bringing the issue to the forefront again. And actually, I think the reason that Trump is bringing this up is because South Africa is about to have their elections in a few months, where they're supposedly poised to elect a little bit of an interesting fellow. Meet Julius Malema, a radical leftist candidate who uses the term "kill the Boers" as his political chant. And for those who don't know, the Boers are the white South Africans, and that particular chant is an old anti-apartheid chant. And with this particular candidate, it doesn't just stop at the chanting. He's repeatedly called for violence against white South Africans in plain language.
Must never be scared to kill. A revolution demands that at some point there must be killing, because the killing is part of a revolutionary act.
I don't know what's going to happen in the future. I'm saying to you, we have not called for the killing of white people, at least for now. I can't guarantee the future.
It may not be me.
Could it be you?
It could be me, yes, but it may not be me.
Yeah, so it could be you. You could, at some future date, call for the slaughter of white people.
Shoot to kill the mother. Kill the poor, the farmer. Kill the poor, the farmer. Brr, pa.
I don't know, seems like an issue, right? But according to the left, it's a nothing to see here situation. They claim that it's just a metaphor that shouldn't be taken literally. The New York Times put out a story basically saying the exact same thing. Take a look at this. Kill the Boers song fuels backlash in South Africa, but historians and the left-wing politicians who embrace it say that it should not be taken literally. But honestly, I struggle with that a little bit. I mean, really? Not take it literally when he's literally, at least seemingly, calling for violence? And all of this is happening with the backdrop of white farmers being murdered in South Africa at a horrifying rate. Since the end of apartheid, there have been over 100,000 murders of white South Africans. To really put it into visual perspective, I'll show you guys a video here of aerial footage where you can see all kinds of white crosses laid out on the side along a road in the farmlands. And supposedly, each one of those crosses represents a white farmer in South Africa who was murdered from the 2018 period to 2022. The left says, oh, well, it's not literal, but it might literally be a genocide. Even John Fetterman at one point kind of alluded to that.
And now let's also talk about that. Now we're talking about genocide. And now South Africa is bringing that kind of a trial. Maybe South Africa being able to sit this one out when they're talking about criticizing.
You know, it kind of seems like the exact type of thing that Democrats would be concerned about, but of course not, because it doesn't benefit them politically. It doesn't benefit their message. And so this issue is just never covered by the mainstream media. But at the very least, we should at least get to the bottom of what's going on, right? We're seeing all of these crazy reports, and of course, the United States is giving South Africa money. You know, maybe, just maybe, we should investigate it, get to the bottom, and actually find the truth. I don't think that's a crazy ask. The left is pretending as if this somehow makes Donald Trump a white supremacist. I mean, that's completely and utterly insane. At the very least, we should have an open mind and try to honestly figure out what's going on. And finally, we have a president who's not afraid to stand up and say exactly that. Trump is cutting off funding to force the world to pay attention, to get to the truth, to get to the bottom. And so I guess now we just sit back and wait and see exactly what's going on. I'm sure this administration is going to come with a report at some point, and then I guess we'll reconvene on the issue. Anyways, that's pretty much what I got for you guys on this one. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure to leave a like and possibly subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.